Russian shocked. Ukrainian counterattacks have destroyed hundreds of Russian IFV BMPs. The Russian army recently lost no fewer than 18 BMP infantry fighting vehicles in just a day or few days of hard fighting, mostly in southern Ukraine. The analysts at Oryx, an independent open-source intelligence collective, tallied the destroyed 1960s vintage IFVs on Wednesday. 18 BMPs is a lot of BMPs. To put the figure into perspective, the Ukrainian army in one of its most disastrous days in recent memory abandoned just 17 M2 IFVs in a failed assault across a Russian minefield in southern Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia Oblast on June 8. The Ukrainians eventually bypassed the minefield and, later, cleared the mines so they could recover many of the M2s and other damaged vehicles. The Russians don't have that option with those 18 BMPs, flattened by artillery and rockets, exploded from the inside by explosives-laden drones, and popped by buried mines. The 3 crew IFVs with their 73mm guns and space for 11 infantry are total write-offs. The extreme single-day loss of 13-ton tracked BMPs underscores 2 important points. 1. That the Russians are losing as much heavy equipment as the Ukrainians are, even as the Russians are on the defensive across most of the 600-mile front line in Ukraine. And 2. That Russian mechanized forces risk slipping into an attrition spiral, as heavy losses of modern vehicles compel them to deploy large numbers of older vehicles that are more vulnerable and thus easier to destroy. Russia has lost around 1 BMP per day, on average, since widening its war on Ukraine in February 2022, but the losses in fact have been uneven over time. The Russian army went to war with 400 active BM3s, 2,800 BMP2s, and 600 BMPs. The newer BMP2s and 3s are better protected than the BMP9s, but after losing 1,000 of the newer IFVs in the first 12 months of the wider war, the Kremlin had no choice but to deploy more older IFVs. Russian industry can complete just a few dozen new IFVs a month, but the Kremlin was sitting on huge stocks of surplus BMPs and BMP2s, 7,200 and 1,400, respectively. Starting late last year, hundreds of 50-year-old BMPs shipped to frontline forces. BMP losses have spiked in part because there are more BMPs for the Russians to lose. But the old IFV's extreme vulnerability to mines, drones, and artillery is a factor, too. It's not for no reason that Ukraine's foreign allies have pledged hundreds of heavy IFVs to the war effort, including 100 Martyrs from Germany, 50 CV-90s from Sweden, and 190 M2s and 157 Strikers from the United States. In this war of meticulous infantry maneuver, IFVs are more important than even tanks are. The Ukrainians' mechanized infantry benefit from better and better protection in the form of their Western-made IFVs. At the same time, Russian mech infantry are getting more and more vulnerable in their own aging BMPs. According to open-source information published on internet, more than 200 BM-3 tracked armored IFVs infantry fighting vehicles of the Russian army would have been destroyed, damaged, or captured by the Ukrainian soldiers. Of these 200 BM-3 IFVs, 68 are now in the hands of the Ukrainian army. According to information published on the internet and social networks, since the beginning of the war, Ukrainian army soldiers have already captured a large number of Russian armored vehicles and tanks, which are repaired and then returned to service to continue the fight within the Ukrainian armed forces. The BM-3 is the latest generation of IFV in the BMP family, developed and manufactured by the Russian defense industry. It entered into service with the Russian army in 1990. The BM-3 is considered the most armed IFV in the world. In fact, the vehicle is fitted with a 2K23 weapon system consisting of a 100mm 2A70 gun, a 30mm 2A72 coaxial cannon, and one 7.62mm PKT coaxial machine gun. Two more 7.62mm PKT machine guns are mounted at the front of the hull, one on each side.